Hey everyone, Shannon Scott of Grave Talks back from the Woodland Cemetery and Arboretum in Dayton, Ohio, and really a little bit tourist cliche, but we're going to stop by the Wright brothers and the Wright family grave, and such a fascinating history of industrialists and publishers and religious minds for that matter. But we have Susan, the mother, Milton, the siblings, of which there were five. Two twins died in 1870, really 5 days apart in that early, childbirth hour. But we have the legendary Wilbur Wright, who died of typhoid fever in 1912, so he was 45 or whatever that was. We have the sister Catherine, which we're going to pay a lot of attention to here in a minute. And then Orville Wright, who dies in 1948. He outlives everybody. Mom died in 1889. Dad died in 1917. They were part of this church that the father was a bishop of. I think it's called the United Brethren in Christ, or United Brothers in Christ, or something like that. And they were anti-slavery, anti-alcohol, and anti-Freemason. And it's interesting how there's quite a debate online about whether or not the Wright brothers were Freemasons or not. They certainly like to kind of adopt them in as they talk about aviation. But I would say with an upbringing like that, they either were or they weren't. But anyway, that aside, what brought them all to Dayton, Ohio, was a magazine, or rather a newspaper that their father published called The Christian Telescope. And eventually Wilbur and Orville got into publishing as well. But Mom, Susan, was really the original tinkerer. She's always at the workbench, in the workshop, in the kitchen, whatever she was doing, putting together contraptions and things, and just kind of getting them in touch with the fingertip aesthetic connection to the mind and the imagination. And so they really all take after Mom, including Catherine, the sister, who I should add was equally as intelligent and fastidious, and eventually ran the Wright brothers company. And as many know, they started building bicycles after publishing, and they were inspired by an aviator that crashed, Otto something, I'm blanking on his name, but Otto, this famous aviator, crashed, and perhaps a light bulb went off, Edison style or what have you. And they began building bikes, eventually started laying out the plans for aviation, had the famous flight at Kitty Hawk, I think in 1903, with the patent for their flyer in 1906. And of course, they had the longest flight and the most consistent continual repetitions of that than just being the first in flight, although that is, of course, the motto of North Carolina. But anyway, I think it's just interesting that none of them married except Catherine, and she married 3 years before she died, so later in her life. They didn't have any children. They all lived in their Dayton, Ohio house, Hawthorne Hill, together. And it really shows the closeness of the three of them, and why that was, in terms of, was it just that they were always in the workshop together, and so they saw each other as kind of the triad, the perfect, structure, the triangle, the pyramid, three, and just didn't want to be separated. But when Wilbur died, Orville's without his brother in 1912 when he died, Wilbur, and Catherine and he are now the pair. And Catherine married a man from New York in 1926, and Orville not only didn't go to the wedding, but they did not reconcile until she was on her deathbed 3 years later. So there was something about him feeling jilted for whatever reason about his sister getting married. And again, the brothers never did, no children. So that's just all very fascinating. But yeah, that industrial age, everybody wanted to invent something, have their hands in the mechanical. It was just the age, it was the hour. Like, everyone in the late 20th is coming up with, a computer, or, eventually the apps of life in the early 21st, the craze. It's really kind of a similar thing in the 19th century translation. Everybody was thinking about, I think really in that period especially, the human connection to the divine through the mechanical. They really saw that as divine aspiration, divine wisdom, divine connection. It was very, very tied to, I'd say, faith, and science was very much seen as in some respects, a product of divine connection and divine energies. And especially in this terms of this family, I don't think that's a stretch of definition in terms of their own very uniquely described church where Dad was the bishop. But anyway, just fascinating family. Catherine definitely should be included, but I think the Wright brothers sounds catchier. And of course, she never really took flight, I don't think, in anything they built. But anyway, she ran their company. So, hey, let's rewrite history a little bit and start calling them the Wright siblings. Maybe a little more than the Wright brothers, but hey, that's just me. But guys, thanks for watching Grave Talks and keeping me motivated, and I really hope you enjoyed the video, and hopefully we'll get to come back to Woodland Cemetery and Arboretum at some point. But if you're ever in Dayton, Ohio, treat yourself. It's just a magnificent place, one of those kind of peerless cemeteries. Take good care.